login. So you are the front-end developer and you want to learn how to integrate Redux Store Manager in your JavaScript front-end application. Whether you are using React, Angular, or other libraries, you can implement Redux-based store or state manager in your application. So if your objective is that how to implement the Redux-based store manager in your code, just following hands-on code heavy example, this video is exactly for you. Hello everyone, my name is Avkash, and in this video I am going to walk through all these steps needed for you to implement the Redux-based store in your Chakra UI application. This tutorial is designed for Chakra UI. However, if you follow this code exactly, you can implement the exact same Redux-based store manager for CoreUI, which I have tested also, or any other UI framework based on JavaScript. I will assume that you already know what Redux is, how it's going to give you advantage in your front-end application. I will walk you through simple flow diagram that how Redux store implementation works in your JavaScript code, and that is important for us to learn at this point before we start writing our code. So as shown in this image, we have four big components here. One is your UI component, where you are making call to backend or whatever reason you are getting the data. As soon as your component updates, it creates an action. That action is being sent to the Redux store through a dispatch action. As soon as that action is coming to a store, it is possible that the store may have the component specific data. If it has component specific data, it sends the component the updated state of that data. If it is not, it interacts with user, get the newer state, and then updates your data. So interaction between the users and the store happens every time depending on when the dispatch action happens, and that's initiated by your component. So a store holds the application state and the data associated with those states. In our example, we are going to build these actions. We are going to build this component and integrate React-redux library in our project. In this example, we are going to implement the React-redux based store, and then we are going to add everything needed so we could create these actions and the dispatch actions flow. And finally, we will update our component code so that it can start using the Redux store. So let's get started. Let's start from the source code introduction. We already have the starter code available in this Redux states folder in Chakra UI tutorials, where all these Chakra UI tutorials are, and the Redux state specific tutorial is here, and the repo is public code, which is part of ProdRamp. At start, both the demo final and the demo starter codes are identical. Here you could see this is simple source code we have, and if we look into the final, we will also see that this is also the exact same code. And the way our development process is that I am going to work in this demo final code, and I will be implementing the Redux state for this Chakra UI project in here. And at the end of my work, I will push all of my code back to in this repo. So if somebody would want to just try the code, they can pull this, they can clone this repo and just run the node package manager, start server here, and they can experience the code as it is. Or if somebody would want to follow up the code and do a step-by-step integration, they can use this demo starter code and they can follow the tutorial and complete this. So this way it's a hands-on exercise versus a full working code available here. For the sake of completeness and the to help you, I have also created this readme at the same location, which gives you all these steps needed for you to implement the Redux state manager in your Chakra UI project. So here you can see that there are about 6 or 7 steps, and in our code we are also going to be following these steps. So it's a both way. You have opportunity to read this instruction as well as follow up the video. So now what we will do is that we are going to access this code at my local machine. So here, as you could see, that I am in Redux states folder and data analytics demo final and starter. So here I will be using the demo final code, and this code is just vanilla code. So first I need to do the install package installer. So all the packages required for this project will be installed here. That's the very first step we do. So everything in my tutorial, I try to start everything from scratch and I record almost everything. So if somebody who is beginner, they get to see all these steps and then they do not miss anything. So installation is done. So node modules folder is created. Next step will be to do npm run start or npm start. This is going to start the node server in my local machine, and this code is going to start here. So while this code is starting, and here is our GitHub repo, I will be opening this code at my Visual Studio code editor. And as you could see here, the local code is running, and let's open the code now. So Visual Studio editor is here. I will be opening the code. Open program Redux state, and here is our final demo analytics data analytics demo final. The code is here and the routes are defined in this code. Here are the routes. As you could see, there is index and data. These two routes are defined. So this is the index, and if we want to go to data, and here is the data. So what we will be doing is that we are going to implement the Redux state in this code step by step, and finally we will connect the backend API in this data home page, so we could read the API response and store in our Redux state. So what I will do, I will just call it data home because that's easier for me. And if I will come here, I will just say call the data home, and data home is here. So result will be, so let's, here is our code. So we are going to follow this thing. So very first thing what you need is to add the required package so we could add support for Redux state manager. So here are the packages which we need to add in our package.json. So one option you have is to run the npm I and the package name, or you can just add all those packages in the package.json and run the npm install. So here is our package.json, and I will be adding these packages here. everything. Let's save it and final npm install. So all these packages which we have just added here, and these packages are React-redux, Redux logger, Redux thunk, React router Redux, and the Redux DevTool extension. So these 5 packages are installed here. After these packages are installed, we could reference those packages in our Chakra UI React code and develop our Redux state manager. So we have completed our step 1. We did not meet any error. And I have also mentioned here that I'm using the React and React DOM version 17.02, and here the router is 512. So that next we need to start implementing our store and all these steps. So very first thing what we need is that we need to create a file called store.js. In this store, in this src root, and add this component, add this code to implement the state manager. Here is our source, here is the root, and in this root we are going to create a new file, store.js, and here we will take this whole code and save here. So as you could see, we are using this create store module from Redux package, and here is middleware, and here is we have React router Redux and the history, all these required modules we needed. We have history, set it up, and here as you could see here that middleware, and finally we are creating the store. So this is the main essential step from this store.js is we are creating the store and using the reducer, and we are composing it with this middleware we have. So it's very straightforward code, and there is nothing to remember. It's just everybody really know these steps and just copy paste. After we have got this store.js, our next step is to add agent.js in the same place at the source. So we will be creating agent.js. Agent.js, and here you could see that it is all about adding the functional support for all our pages. So as you could see here in this agent.js, we are creating a home function which is making this API call. So in the home page, this function will be called home.todos, and the response from this API will be collected, and that response will be available to this page. So this is all page specific code, and we are adding agent.js in this step because that is at the source level, because next steps are coming, they are inside source but in different directory levels. So we will not be adding any of this code. We have just added this agent.js as a starter. So we will come back to step number 3 again. In the step number 4, we are going to create a folder called state inside the src state. So we are in src, we are creating a folder called state. In the state, we are creating, you see that state, we need to create a folder called action, and we also need to create a folder called reducers. So in this state, let's create a new folder called actions, and we also need to create a new folder called reducers. So we have created actions and reducers folders here. In the actions folders, we need to create the index.js, and here all that page specific directives will be defined here. So application load, async start, async end, home page loaded, home page unloaded, depending on what your page directives are, you can use here. I will leave it as it is for now. Next, at the reducers, I will be creating a new file called home reducers.js. In this home reducers.js, here is the code related with our page. So I will leave it as it is. And then next, I will be creating index.js. And index.js is a collection of all the reducers we have related with our state. So I will be, so as you see here we have combined reducers. So this is the important part. So we are going to combine, and all the definition of all that reducers we have, we are going to export default and then keep using comma and keep exporting them. Next, we need to create a folder called utils in this src. We are here, so we are, as you see here, src utils. So we have this here. We already have a utils folder here in our code. So we will be creating helpers.js. So utils helper.js, and in this helper.js you will be seeing it that we are going to export. So this is the create actions, and here payload, and here we have payload. So data type is always going to be payload. So we have created this actions, and then we are going to connect that also. So now we have got this code added in our project related with Redux. So most of the work, if you see here, we have done is that we have implemented the store, we have implemented the agent, helpers, we have set up the action, and in the framework, as you see here, that we have actions and we have reducers and we have index, and all that reducers we are going to be adding. So if you see here, this home reducers.js is actually going to be related with the home reducers which we have here. So for example, if we are trying to create a index home and we are going to connect this in our code, so we have to make sure that there is a reducers available for home. That's why we have used home reducer, because we are going to connect here. So step one is completed in terms of creating the structure for our Redux store in Chakra UI application. We can look into our application. It is still running. It has no problem whatsoever. So we can go home, and we can also go from here to data home. Okay, so let's come back to home. In this next step, what we are going to do is that we are going to look into our index home. So index home, here is our page definition, and page is connected with container. So you see here, this is a container, and implementation of container index home is here. So this is our index home, and the implementation code is index home here, and that's where this code is here. So what you are seeing here is actually coming out from this page. So if I say I'm here today, if I write today, and you will see today will be listed, it means it's coming from here. So if we want to add support for Redux state here, it means whenever we are going to load this page, we are going to make a backend call, and then the response from that backend call will be stored into our Redux state manager. So to support that thing, we need to implement the state for index home. So here was our index home, and here we are coming from index home and jumping to our container, and wherever our container is, we have to connect our Redux state specific code here. So very first, we are going to connect with React-redux. It is very important. This thing you have to do for every page wherever you would want to use the Redux state manager. Next, now we need to add the home page loaded and home page unloaded, which will be defined into the actions. So now we come back to here in this actions and index, we have to define those directives. So come back here, and now you see that we were talking about the actions here. So we will use these two actions, home page loaded, and we have defined these two pages. So it means now we have to access these two in our container index home page here. There you go. So if you see here, this is accessing. So it means our link to that page is correct. So home page loaded and unloaded are connected here. Next, we are going to connect the map states to props and map dispatch to props integration. So is this index home where initially we were exporting is without any state manager, but with this state manager now we are connecting this to React-redux connect, and using this map state to props and the map dispatch to props, so we have defined state to props and there is an API, so it's going to home page loaded payload and that's connected and index home. So we have defined this part. Now at least we have connected our containers code for this index home page. Let's come back to our instructions. So we have at least used this code, and now remember we have to implement this code so that we could make this backend call. So here is our agent code. So let's look into the agent code and implement this agent. In this case, I'm just using this home API route, so we know that we are using for this home page for now. Here request, so it's just a publicly available placeholder, and as you could see here that whenever you are going to make a call, you are going to get a JSON result for that request. It's to do. So if you say give me the to do and then give me the one, if you are not going to say one, you are going to get whole bulk of to do items. So it's just a temporary JSON server I have. Later I will replace it with the Python code in other demo. So that's what our API, and here whether you are calling the get, put or post depending on how you want to call it. So we have defined this constant called home, and this is home is going to make a call request.get and is going to use request is API root, and depending on what this request is get, it's gonna make that method and going to make this call and use this then response, and response will be collected as JSON and that result will be available here. And finally we are exporting this home. So we have implemented our agent code, so URL path, everything related with our API call. So we have home available now. So in case our agent.js implemented, so we could call this function by referencing this agent.js in our index home implementation code now. So remember our directives were that we were in page, from page we jump to containers, containers are there, and then from containers we go to implementations, and here is our implementation. It means we have to reference import from, so we are in agents. Let's add the component, and component will unmount. So we can say this dot props onload we are going to make a call to our agent dot home. Now we see big connection, and we will call this to-dos. So just making this call, when this page will load, the API home to-dos will be called, and we are going to get return, and that response will be stored in this props. And after this is this dot props dot on unload. So now if we try to load our page, and as you see here, it's the auth is not defined and token is not defined in agents. So let's look into what we have missed here. So here is the agents, and because we are not using auth and agent, so we could actually disable them. So after we have added component will mount and component will unmount, now we can come back to our code implementation. So here, as you see, that we have added support for home page loaded and home page unloaded. Now we have to make sure that we integrate the home page reducers in this home reducers and index here. So let's take a look what we need to add in home reducers now. So first we will access the index, and we have home page loaded unloaded here. Next, as you could see here, that home page loaded and home page unloaded, and the request will be, when the API request will be made, data will be loaded, and that data will be available in this data, this state, initial state. So that's our home reducers we have defined. Now our home reducer is defined. Now what we need is that we need to use that reducer and integrate here. Import home reducers. So we have this, and then export default. So we are using combined reducers, and all the reducers we have to, so we have made sure that home reducer and the index is all added here. So let's take a look into our instruction. So we have completed this, we have added this, we have also home reducers, and we have also implemented the index. And now we can look into the helper just to make sure helper is added here, all the code. Then in the index home we have made sure index, and then so we have implemented this, then we have also implemented this, and finally, okay, let's come back to app.js now. So in the app.js, because as you see here that we have chakra provider and then everything else, there is no reference to a store, Redux store. So let's connect this thing here. So you see here that we need to add this provider which is using a store, and we need to reference this store from Redux store. So here is our provider. It will be provider, and here will be our import, and this our storage. So now we have made sure it is connected here. So we have completed most of these steps. Now let's look into this code. Oh, provider is not defined, and this provider will be from X. At the source there is a called middleware.js. After we have added, so let's add the middleware.js at the same location .js, and let's use the code. Our middleware, it's referencing the agent is here, and as you could see here that agent and the actions, they are not available yet. So in case we need, we can add them later. So we have this and then rest. I have imported them from my different project, so we do not need as of now, but if we want, we can define them. We have to come back here and perfect. So now we have meet this requirement for our middleware.js. After we have updated this provider, let's reload our middleware, not resolve agent. So let's see in middleware.js, there is agent. So in the middleware, is agents. Correct now. So all those code is added. Now it's best for us to restart the server. So we see this page is not loaded. Let's look into the error. Error cannot read properties of undefined data. And if we look into here, say data state home reducer dot data. We can look into here, data state home reducers. We have a state home reducer. So home reducer, so state index. We have a state and then home reducers. Okay, so here we have import home reducers from home reducers. So home reducers are here. It means when we are calling home reducers, it is home reducers. So looks like that I did not put the S completely, and here our code is working. So at least so far all the steps we have followed, they are all working. Now we need to validate, does the state code API is working. So how we can test that? Let's come back to our main code. Let me close all these pages for a while. Is index. So our implementation is here, and here is the implementation code. So this is the place where the code is being pulled. So this props. So what we can do here is that we can say, let's write a text here. JSON dot stringify this dot props. And there you go. So just making call, it's making this call, and here is the loading and all the data, so user ID. Thus our code is made here. So if we look into to-dos, to-do is here. If we called 1, means item number 1, that you are going to get user ID 1 from the to-dos. So this way we could validate that our API is working. If we need to check the network, we can also check the network here, and then we are loading this page, and here's the API which bring this result back to us, and that result is available here. So this is the result, basically data. So data part is result or response from our API, and rest information is available in our Redux store. So if we want to change this API to make this dynamic call for the single user, we have this API. Or if we can change this to So here we have two functions, to-dos and to-dos by user. So a user ID can be made, and here we have a call which can make, if you make to-dos, and response will be all the user IDs are there. If we want to only make calls to by user, then we can pass by user. We can say user ID number 1, and only user ID number 1 will be. If we want user ID number 10, ID 10. So that's how you can implement the Redux store in your Chakra UI application. So let's review our steps one more time. Very first, we added packages. So we made sure we have added those packages here. So these are the packages we added. Next step, we have added store.js that was added in our root, and that's the place where we have created the store. Step number 3, we have added this middleware.js, and that's connected with our agent. So that's our middleware. And step number 4, we have added the agent.js. So this is our agent.js, and depending on all the implementations we have to support for all those pages, they will be all added here. So I will be creating another tutorial where I will be adding Redux store to another page top of it. So that's the changes we are going to see, and that's how you will be seeing that I will be adding a new control here depending on what I have defined in this agents page. So we have added agent, and after we have created this state actions and then the state reducers. So we came state actions and reducers, and we have created all that actions IDs here, and for these depending on for every page. So we have implemented Redux store for index home, so we have created reducers code for here and combined that. So if we have added reducer for data page or login page and we want to combine them, we can keep combining all the reducers here. So that's how we are going to enhance this combined reducer function at index.js. After that, we have created this utils, and in the utils folder we created this Redux helpers and created this action. So here was our utils helpers and the data type object for our payload. So we have done this. Then the container, here is the container. Now the implementation comes for the page specific code. Previously majority of the code was general for implementation of a store. So we came to our page index home, from where we went to container, and initially we were only connecting to our implementation, but then we have connected Redux and then use this map state to props and then map dispatch to props and then combine them here. So that's how we integrated homepage loaded and homepage unloaded. And then when we came here, we could make this call. So in order to make these calls, now we have to implement those calls in the agents. So we came to agent and we have added this function to-dos by user depending on, and we were able to call them. After that, we have reference and then we can read it, and at the very last step we have also need to update our app.js to support the provider, and I think this provider is also coming out from React-redux, and that's how we were able to add the Redux support in our Chakra UI application. In this step, we are going to push our code. So let's come back here. So these are the files which we have added in our project. So these are mostly everything is new we have added. So we are going to add git pull. If I have some code, I remember I have updated readme, so that is there. And then so git add git commit, final code is added, code is pushed. Let's validate this. Redux state final, and if you see here, all this code store is added in the agents middleware, and the code related with the state is also added here. So that proves that we have just recently the work we have done, all that code is updated, and this code is available for anyone to use it as it is in the demo final, or if they want to follow this tutorial, you can use this demo starters and you can learn step-by-step implementation of Redux State Manager in your Chakra UI project. So that's all I had in this tutorial for you, and I will be seeing you in another tutorial. That's all, my friends. If you have enjoyed our content, please like it, share it, subscribe it. And finally, please remember, be good and do good. Thank you.